Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to this event sponsored by the Center for Arab and Islamic Studies at Villanova University. My name is Catherine Warwick, and I'm the director of the center, and it is our very great honor to have with us as a guest today, Mohammad Sabaaneh, who is an artist and a political cartoonist in Palestine, and who has a recent book out called Powerborne of Dreams, My Story is Palestine. And he's going to talk to us today about his art, about the connection between art and politics. And we're really interested in how the political context in which he works shapes his art. He has a long career, an illustrious career as a political cartoonist. He's published in many outlets in the region. And he is the chief political cartoonist for the Palestinian newspaper Al Hayat Al Jadida. And he has also recently attained his master's degree in the United Kingdom, for which my congratulations, Mohammed. Thank you so much for being with us today, Ramadan Mubarak, and I will now turn it over to you.
Thank you for having me today with this panel. And I'm sorry, because of Ramadan, we have very hard time in Ramadan, actually. That's why it's not flexible for us to do this presentation in another time. Actually, yes, recently I published this, which we can consider the first Palestinian comics, because here in Palestine and most of the Arab country, we don't have this kind of art. Maybe after what we call it the Arab Spring, we found some comics in Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, actually, but here in Palestine, we don't have like this kind of art. I had this opportunity to know this kind of art through my trip to the United States. I have met a lot of leading artists like Seth Tobokman, Joe Sacco, and another artist who they introduced me to this kind of art and actually encouraged me to create my own comics about Palestine. Nations themselves are narrations, and this quotation from the Palestinian academic Edward Said, who was teaching in Columbia University. During all of my career, I was looking for political framework to implement my artwork in it, not just keep drawing about our daily basis, what's going on in Palestine every day, because every day we have events, every day we have accident with the occupation here in Palestine. But to build your solid career through your art, I think you have implement or make this this kind of relation between the political framework and your visual arts. I have the first sketch for my second book that we are talking about today. I had this sketch with me during my trip to Luxembourg 2 years ago. And while I was traveling back from the border, because all the Palestinian border under the Israeli control, the Israeli soldiers have found this sketchbook while they were searching my backpack. I saw them just looking for my sketchbook and talking with each other. Then one of these soldiers called me to come to see my sketchbook or to ask me some question. And then all the Israeli soldiers surrounded me in the border, like the last panel in this sketch. And one of them asked me, why you have done this sketch? I just looked around me, all the Israeli soldiers surrounded me like the last panel, and I've told him, because that's exactly what's going on right now. All the Israeli soldiers surrounded me and trying. My first book was white and black political cartoon from Palestine, which was published by also American publisher. And this book was translated into the Spanish and Catalan language. All that pages from this book was political cartoon with different style, different techniques. I was experimenting some new techniques and tried to establish a new kind of art or new style of art. But during my tours to United States, Ireland, France, and most of that country that I have done tour in it, most of the people want to know more and more want to read, not just looking to these images, they wanted explanations about why exactly I have done these sketches. That book was, we can call it visual narrative only, without any text, without any quotations. I've tried to create some kind of art with a new style. That book was after my decision, after I was released from the prison, from the Israeli prison, because my first book, or my idea for my first book, and I have this decision to do this book while I was in the Israeli prison. I wasn't alone in my cell. The Israeli wanted to isolate me in a small cell for more than 3 weeks. And because I think that the art can be used for therapy, not just for political issues. It can be for critical thinking, to improve the critical thinking for some students. It can be used for therapy. I try to use the art to spend my time inside that cell. I've decided that I want to make a book about the Palestinian prisoner and about the Palestinian people outside the prison. I will try to create a new style. I've spent all of my time inside that cells, just thinking about my first book and the subjects that I want to depict in my first book. My first cartoon came in 2014 during the war against Gaza, and this cartoon was my first cartoon for my second book. For my first book, and you can see it's just visual narrative without any text, without any. Just talking about the situation. In my first book, also, I've tried to make around the world, and you can see the intersectionality between the Ukrainian war now and the Palestinian people, the refugees from Ukraine and the refugees from Palestine. You can compare between the refugees from Syria at that time and the refugees from Palestine. That's why I've done some cartoons just to compare between what's going on here in Palestine and what's going on around the world. You can see most of these cartoons without any dialogue, without any text, just trying to show the situation here in Palestine without any text. And at that time, maybe you will surprise, at that time, I couldn't speak English language. That was very hard for me to speak in English language. During my work in my first book, I tried to improve my English language also, because my first publisher told me that I have to visit the United States and I have to do some lectures and speech about my first book. That was another challenge. I'm not just working on my first book, and also I'm trying to improve my English language. And during my tours, in 2017 and 2018, that gave me great opportunity actually to meet some comics artists from United States like Seth the Bookman, Ethan, Joe Sacco, and another Peter Cooper, and out of comics artists and cartoonists from United States. And that's what introduced me to the comics as a new kind of arts here in Palestine. Unfortunately, maybe I know that it is very popular art in the United States and most of the country around the world, but here in Palestine, we don't have this kind of art. And all of these friends and artists told me about that art, gave me their books and their comics. When I have finished my first book and my first and second tour in the United States and some countries, some European countries, I thought that maybe I will start another art project, but that need more research, that need more challenge, because I here in Palestine we don't have resources or public library or all this kind of art. That's why I need to get maybe art residency. And then because I've been working with university here, private university here in Palestine, I thought, no, I need to get master's degree in any country to have this chance to improve my art. That's why I applied to Chevening scholarship to the UK, and I got that scholarship, traveled to the UK, and that gave me actually great opportunity to meet another artist like Martin Rosen. He is the Guardian cartoonist, and he's one of my great friends in the UK. I have this opportunity also to visit museums, try another kind of art, not just comics and cartoon. I have this kind of art, this kind of sculpture that I have done during my master degree. And actually, I had a maybe strange decision during my master degree. I thought that I will not do anything about Palestine. I need to take this time as a vacation to try talk about another issues, another topics, international, maybe some international topics like pollution, environment, human things. I've tried another kind of art, another kind of medium, like this kind of art in taglio print. We don't have this kind of art here in Palestine, because if you want to accomplish this kind of art, you need to use some chemical things. And here in Palestine, it is prevented by the Israeli, because it could be used to create a bomb or something like that. I've tried also printmaking to talk about another issues, not just the Palestinian issues, with a big size of linoleum. This big mural about the environment, actually, also I have done during my master degree, this big mural, 5 meters by 40 centimeters. And it's talk about the relation between the human being and the environment. But, you know, as a Palestinian, you are facing the restrictions, the lack of freedom, wherever you go. I've faced the coronavirus. As all the countries around the world, the British under the lockdown became under the lockdown. We faced this kind of restriction. I have to go to my home, facing another prison inside the UK. I've escaped from Palestine to get freedom and museums. Meet another artist and improve my techniques and my topics, but I faced another restriction in the UK because of the coronavirus. And actually, during my quarantine at home, during the lockdown in the UK, my friend Seth Tokman invited me to give lecture for his student in School of Visual Art in Manhattan. And at the beginning of that lecture, actually, all of his students from around the United States, they have spent more than 30 minutes just talking about and complaining because of the coronavirus and the restriction and all of these conditions. And that remind me of my life inside the Israeli prison. It's the same, actually. It's the same. The lack of freedom, you cannot go outside your home. It's very dangerous to go outside your home during coronavirus restriction. But even with all of this restriction, it's most harder when you be in the inside the Israeli prison, because you don't have this kind of a privilege, internet, television. You can buy whatever you need from Amazon. Inside the Israeli prison, you don't have even windows to look outside your cell. That's why I've decided I will go back to my main issue. I will go back to the Palestinian issue, because even during my master degree journey, in one of our trip to one of the British museum called Illustration House, George Hem, he's a British artist. He was hired by the Israeli government in 1970 to create the visual identity for the Israeli states, what we call Israeli states. And these illustrations from his exhibition inside the Illustration House in London. And you can see in one of these illustrations, he wanted to depict or to convey that the Israeli occupation bring this modernity to the Palestinian people. You can see this cloud in Jerusalem, full with cars and in industry, factory, big building, and all of this kind of things, which mean that the Israeli bring all this modernity for the Palestinian people. You can see another illustration that he wanted to depict the Palestinian people as a Bedouin, just Bedouin without any culture, without any identity. He wanted to create the Israeli identity on the ruins of the Palestinian identity, on the ruins of the Palestinian people, and in the ruins of the Palestinian culture. And that's why I have decided I want to invest my time during my master's degree. I want to invest this opportunity also to talk about the Palestinian people, to rehumanize the Palestinian people, and just to talk about this propaganda. That's why back to settler colonialism as a political framework and what's going on here in Palestine, because most of the people around the world, they call the situation here in Palestine as maybe occupation, conflict, and all of these conflict. Okay. But actually, it's not conflict. The conflict is usually became between two sides, equal sides. They are fighting with equal tools, with equal situation to get more privilege in this conflict. If we are talking about the occupation, as Patrick Wolf has said, the occupation wanted to exploit the indigenous people. They want the occupation occupy piece of land because he wanted the natural resources, want to use the indigenous as a laborers, or to use this kind of forces to improve his economy, to improve his situation because of maybe political aims. And this will be, the occupation will be for a period of time. But settler colonialism, there are some settlers or some immigrants who they traveled from another country to occupy the land for these indigenous, expel them, eliminate them, and build their own identity, or this new identity on the ruins of the indigenous people. And that's exactly what's going on here in Palestine. That's exactly what's happened in United States of America, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and all of these countries. And that's why I thought, how exactly I will use my art to rehumanize the Palestinian people or the indigenous people, because how the settlers, they eliminate the indigenous by dehumanize them, by stealing their own identity, own culture, to justify or to find excuse to eliminate them, to expel them, because these barbaric people, they don't have the right to be in this land. This land should be for these colonizers who they immigrated from another country to this land. And that's exactly what Ilan Pappé, the Israeli historian, has said. The colonizer can eliminate people by whipping them from the historical narrative. And that's exactly what's going on here in Palestine. They want to eliminate us from the historical narrative. And that's why you can see some of this Israeli fashion, they have used the Palestinian scarf to create their own identity. This is not, this is exactly what's going on here in Palestine. They wanted to steal our narrative. They want to steal our culture, our visual culture, our fashion, our food, to create their own identity. And that's exactly what's happened with me in 1990. While I was invited to do my exhibition, cartoon exhibition, inside the International Criminal Court. I have done my exhibition inside the International Criminal Court, and maybe you will surprise that the second day for my exhibition was stolen from inside the International Criminal Court, because they want to eliminate my narrative. They want to eliminate my story, how I wanted to convey the narrative of my people. And that's why exactly my exhibition was stolen from inside the International Criminal Court. That's why exactly they have arrested me in 1930 and put me in the Israeli cell, because they want to eliminate my narrative as a cartoonist. That's why also they have confiscated one of my artwork while I was traveling back from Brussels in 1980. all of these accidents happened with me as a Palestinian cartoonist because they wanted to eliminate my narrative. And the first idea came to my mind, why I don't use some images from the Congress Library, because if you want to go to the Congress Library, you can see some Palestinian photos before 1948. 1948, when the Israeli state was established. Inside the Congress Library, you can see many photos for the Palestinian people before 1948. I was thinking why I don't use these photos to create coloring book for kids. But at the same time, I thought, okay, why I should do this kind of project for kids? We need to talk with adults more than kids. And that's why I back to my idea to create comics about the Palestinian people using the comics, because I thought the comics was great tool during the Second World War. It was used to create propaganda during the Second World War, and that's why you can find a lot of heroes was created to convey the American propaganda during the Second World War and First World War. I have done some literature review about the comics, and I've seen some comics was used as social engineering to talk about some social issues, not just about political issues. One of the most important comics I've seen, this comics for Art Spiegelman. This comics was created by Art Spiegelman to talk about the Holocaust, and this kind of comics was considered one of the most important comics, and can be considered one turning point for the comics used, because this one used about the Holocaust, very serious issues, not just about heroes and some fictional story. And that's why I've decided I want to use the comics to talk about the Palestinian issues and my issues in Palestine. And that's why I've started my comics, Powerborne of Dreams. My story is Palestine. I've started with creating my main character, and because I was inside the Israeli prison, I've tried to depict myself as a main character of this story or this comics, because it should be biographical comics, because I'm talking about my story about real events which was happened inside the Israeli prison. And that's how I created my character. And you can see Joe Sacco, how he has created his main character for his comics about Palestine also, because his journalism comics, which it's called journalism comics because it's depend on interviews and real stories that he has done or he has faced during his visit to Gaza and Palestine. That's why I've decided I want to create my main character, myself as a main character. The second character was the bird. The bird is character because I will tell you during this presentation about this bird. But one of my friends, he's from Gaza. His name is Maysara Barud. During coronavirus, he has created many sketches about the freedom, because he has been facing the siege inside Gaza for more than 15 years. And then coronavirus came. That's what provoked him to talk about the freedom through this bird. I've asked him, I need to use your character, the bird, as a second character for my comics, as an indicator that this kind of character is indicator for freedom, symbol for freedom. You have used this character as a main character for use sketches, and I need to use this character for my comics to indicate also freedom, and that's why I've used his character and improved this character to be the second character for my story. Maybe you will surprise if I tell you that, okay, I was inside the Israeli prison, but when I wanted to go back to my memory and to remember that the situation inside the prison, it was very hard for me because I tried to forget the life inside the prison because it was very hard. That's why I went back, saw some movies about the Israeli prison, saw some documentary about the Israeli prison to depict my location for my comics. Even the panel inside my comics, most of my panels, it looked like this small bed, because this small bed it's looked like the whole word for the Palestinian prisoner, because you can find his photos, his kids' photos, his family photos inside this small area, and that's why I try to use the same proportion for most of my panels inside my comics. And in some of these panels, I've tried to go outside these panels because I thought these panels, it's look like cells, it's look like prisons. It's for first time for me. I have done comics and I found this small panels, it's look like cells, small cells, and that's why I tried to go outside this cells or outside these panels during my journey for this comics. And also I've tried to use some international art as a reference for my art. This the left artwork is for MC Asher. He's from Netherlands. I've seen this artwork in his museum in Hague, and that's why I've tried to use some international my pages and some real photo to as references for the situation inside the prison. You can see the Palestinian prisoners in this photo, and my illustration, he's the prisoners. And even the texture that I have used inside the prison, it's look like how the prisoners, they counting their days inside the prison. If you do some zoom out, try to translate all of this kind of symbols for the prisons inside my texture, my shapes and my characters. You can see some pages, it's the same positions, the same perspective, the same situation, that the prisoners, he's on his bed and the bird coming back to him to talk to him. It's weakness in my comics, but actually the same. This bird traveling outside the prison, then come back to the prisoner. He he always find the prisoner at the same place, at the same position on his bed, and that's exactly when I was released from the prison. I traveled to the States and to Spain, to France, and after 2 years, one of my friends, he called me from inside the prison, and when I asked him, "Where are you?" he told me, "At the same place, at the same cell." And that's actually shocked me after 2 years when I was after my release from the prison. And that's why exactly I've tried to translate this idea and this kind of splash pages in my comics. This actually small short video show the techniques that I have used in my comics. I've tried to use the printmaking, the linoleum, and actually, I was asked why I've used this kind of technique to convey my story. Inside the Israeli cell, I have found a lot of Palestinian prisoners who they have carved their names on that walls inside the Israeli cells. And I couldn't do that actually inside the cells. It was very hard for me to carve my name. That's why I have tried to carve to carve all these stories for the Palestinian prisoner outside the prison. That's why exactly I use this kind of technique to convey these stories and to depict my stories. And because when you are carving the white areas and leave exactly, I've done this kind of comics, as the sign of the darkness inside the Israeli cell. About the stories, the story inside the prison, because inside my book, because the comics is an artwork and able my story, and I couldn't, because it's not just biographical. It's not just about me. It's not biographical comics narrative. It's also talking about another Palestinian people outside the Israeli prison. You can find that the bird is fictional character, but most of this career as a cartoonist, that's why you can find that you will find a lot of splash pages. You can find a lot of image narrative, not just narration and stories. That's why we can consider this kind of stories as a hybrid narration. It's mixed between the biographical narrative and non-biographical narrative. It's mixed between fictional stories and non-fictional stories. It's mixed between the image narrative and the narration. And that's why exactly we cannot label this kind of story of any label of the comics story. Stories. I've started my comics with me because I thought and that's why I've tried to depict that the Palestinian prisoner, when they arrest him, they are taking him from outside his time, outside his life, to another life. Also about the first night inside the Israeli prison, and most of my splash pages, I've tried to translate my inner feeling and my inner emotion about my life inside the prison. You can find that like this serialic photo, it's not real, but it's translate what exactly I have felt inside the Israeli prison. And I think most of the Palestinian prisoners, they are facing the same feeling, and they have the same prison. Another internet around the world, I've tried to use it as in the Israeli prison, and in these photos or in this illustrations, I've tried to talk about the all of this topics, the main topics or the main stations inside the Israeli prison: the interrogation, when they arrest him, when they irrigate him, when they isolate him inside the Israeli prison. And from cell number 28, I've had this idea to start working in my first book, and that's why I called my exhibition about the Palestinian prisoner when I was released from the Israeli prison, cell number 28. From cell number 28, I've decided that I want to draw about the Palestinian prisoner, about their life inside the Israeli prison. Another illustration about the life inside. It will be between the interrogation and the inside the Israeli interrogation center in Haifa. The military court, because most of the people outside Palestine, they think that the Israeli, they have courts, and when they judge any Palestinian prisoner, they judge him by law. But actually, all of these courts, it is under military control, under the Israeli military control, and that's why I think it's looked like just play. It's not. It's not real thing. There is nothing under the Israeli intelligence to illustrate more than one page about the Israeli court. There is something during our life in the Israeli prison called Bosta. And that means when they want to move the Palestinian into the court or all of these facilities, they take the Palestinian prisoner by very hard methods, by iron bus. They put the Palestinian prisoner, they put the inside, going to the bathroom for maybe 2 or 3 days. I've depicted this inside the Israeli prison. And my main story has started when the interrogator, the Israeli interrogator, told me that you are not going to live with Palestinian heroes inside the Israeli prison. You are going to live with criminals. They are not feeding the bird inside the prison. They are not writing poems about the freedom or about the sun or about the sky. All of these Palestinian prisoners, they are criminals. That's exactly what the Israeli interrogator told me during the interrogation. But when I was moved from the interrogation center to the Israeli prison, they are feeding the birds. Most of the small birds, when they try to fly, they fall down inside the inside the prison, and that's why most of the Palestinian prisoners they are taking care of these birds, feeding them, take care of them till they can fly outside the prison, and that's why I have created this bird as a main narrator for my stories. This bird, because I've tried to help him inside the Israeli prison. He has decided that he wants to travel around Palestine to some real stories from outside the prison, and bear between the life for them. That's why how exactly I wanted to convey that the Palestinian or the indigenous inside Palestine, they are living now in small reservations. It's not cities, it is big prisons for the Palestinian people, not just in Gaza and also in the West Bank. And you can see that from these stories, like this, the first story about the people in Jerusalem, because the people in Jerusalem, if they want any young man or young woman to get married for the Palestinian, with Palestinian from, for example, if he is from Jerusalem and want to get married from people or from women from West Bank, he has to live in a small camp called Kufr Aqab, and this small area, it's non-organized. The Israeli police, they don't care about it. It's full with drug, full with illegal building, because no one care about this area. The Palestinian Authority, they cannot organize this area. The Israeli government, they don't care about this area, and it's looked like punishment for all the people from Jerusalem if they want to make any relation with another Palestinian from West Bank. And this story, it's a real story from my friends. She's a Christian from small village in Jenin. And she told me what's happened with her during her life with her husband in Kufr Aqab. And actually, she works with the UK consulate in Jerusalem, and she has permission from the British consulate in Jerusalem. With all of that, she cannot live inside Jerusalem. Another story from Gaza. Most of the people think if I want to talk about Gaza, there are many stories from Gaza. But actually, I have decided that I want to talk about the drone. Most of the people inside Gaza, because of the drone, they cannot sleep, they cannot concentrate in anything. This is, some people, they think that this is not an issue because This drone is look like threat on their heads 24/7 hour. That's why this drone converted their life into the very big prison. Another story from one of my friends, his name is Ziad here in Ramallah. And one of his students was killed by the Israeli soldier while he was going to school. That's why he wrote an article about that. And that's why I've asked him to translate his article into the visual, into visuals, just to tell the people about what's happened with his student. And this is also a real story about this small kid. One of my friends, he's from the Haitian camp. His father was a refugee. His grandfather was expelled from Haifa in 1948. His father has decided to brought a small piece of land in Bethlehem to build small building for his kids and his to brought this.
Oh no, it looks like we have run into a problem of the internet connection. Mohammed has been joining us from the West Bank, and I think the internet connection was unstable. Oh, perhaps we have him back now. Mohammed, are you able to rejoin us? Let's give this a few seconds and see if we can get the connection again. Well, we have you visually, Mohammed, but I don't think we have sound yet.
I don't know exactly what's happened.
We just about have you back. The sound is a little bit distorted.
Okay, another story for.
Oh no.
Now it's okay.
I can hear you again.
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know what's happened. Okay, we were here. Yeah. This story about one of my friends, he's from Bethlehem, and his grandfather was expelled from Haifa in 1948 during the establishment of the state of, what do you call, the state of Israel. His father has decided to buy a small piece of land to build a small building for his kids. And after he brought this small land, the Israeli government has decided to build a settlement very close to his land. That's why they has declared that his land is military zone. That means he cannot build any building in that area. And that's why he became refugees again. His father and he also became refugees again because he could not build anything at that land. Another story was about my brother daughters, because she was birthed while he was in the Israeli prison, and she could not recognize him when he was released from the prison. That's why exactly I have done this story about the Palestinian prisoner also. And another story happened with me in the year of 2001. While I was student at Najah University, I was working as portrait artist. I used to draw the Palestinian who were killed by the Israeli soldier. And one day I was drawing one of these Palestinian people. His family came to me to ask me about to take that portrait about for that Palestinian. His small brother asked me a very strange question. He told me, when the Israeli soldier kill me, you will draw portraits for me, and that's why he shocked me. At that time, I've decided I will not draw anyone again, and that's why I've done this story and include this story in my comics. There are many stories about the house's demolition. I've collected many. The last story in my comics was about Muhammad Matar. His kids was going to his school, and the Israeli soldier killed him while he was going to his school, and they did not give his family his bodies. And I've done interviews with his mother, and she told me about her feeling. Her kid was killed by the Israeli, but she cannot see his body. It's very strange story for the people outside Palestine, but that's going on every day here in Palestine. And that's exactly, with this story, I have finished my comics. It's looked like I'm comparing between the life of the Palestinian people outside the Israeli prison and inside the Israeli prison. And you can find that all the Palestinian people, they are in prisons, even if they are outside the walls of the Israeli prison. And that's why the main idea of my comics. After I have done my book, I've launched my online gallery. Also, another project. I've used some iconic photos for the Palestinian people to do some lino cut, and I've launched this website. Some of these photos, I relied on some photography from some Palestinian journalists. This one from Gaza, for example. I hanged some of these original prints in some confrontation area like Beta. And actually the Israeli soldier have removed this print. I have done some graffiti here in Palestine also. Try
I think we might have hit another glitch with the internet connection.
to do and to convey
I appreciate his patience and persistence in trying to make this connection work. Unfortunately, we don't have any control over the quality of the internet connection that we have today. I think he will pop back in just as soon as he is able to do so. I'll take this opportunity to let everyone know, if you have a question you'd like to ask him, please do pop it into the Q&A box. We have 2 questions that we'll ask Mohammad to address when he's finished with his presentation, but you're welcome to add more questions to the Q&A. Let's give him just a minute to see if he can get back in. Also, while we have a moment here, I have some copies of his most recent book, Powerborne of Dreams. So any Villanova student who would like a copy, get in touch with me and I'd be happy to provide you with one on behalf of the center.
I'm sorry for that. I don't know what's going on.
I'm sorry. It's it's the nature of the internet connection, and unfortunately, we can't do anything about it. But I appreciate your patience.
I've tried to connect my internet or my computer to stable network, but I don't know what's going on.
Well, it looked like you were just about at the end of your presentation. Would you like to turn to Q&A and take questions?
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are two questions that you can probably see in the Q&A. Because we're recording this, I'll go ahead and read them out. The first question from Jerusha Connor. This is such powerful work. The emotional resonance is as strong as the social critique. I also love the use of the bird. And I became curious about the fish motif that I noticed repeated in a few of your earlier works as well. Throughout your talk, you showed us most panels on their own, detached from the larger narrative in the book. When you go about composing your books, how do you weigh the competing objectives of advancing the story versus creating panels that can potentially stand on their own, as many of those you showed today do so well? Thank you.
Actually, it's a very hard process for me as a cartoonist who has been working with one image to convey a story, and now I have to create a new way or to create a new kind of medium. And that's why I've done a lot of research how the comics artists they have done their comics by writing some notes and then improve these notes into the storyboard, and from storyboard into the outline, from outline to start work with sketching, and then create my own comics. But actually, right now also I'm working with another project, trying to do the second edition for this story, because I think there are many stories about what's going on here in Palestine, and in this comics I'm trying to convey our daily basis, not just talking about the history of Palestine, because you can find the history of Palestine in Joe Sacco book, with Layla Abdelrazik book. They have done comics about Palestine, and they have conveyed a lot of stories about the history of Palestine, the 1948, the refugees, and all of these stories. But no one talk about our daily basis now, what's going on here in Palestine. And because now I'm here inside Palestine, I can talk about all of these stories. You can find a lot of very, very short stories, it's not very complicated story, but it can convey big issues, what's going on here in Palestine, like small kids or small kid that she had a dream to go to her school with clean shoes, and she could not, because every night the Israeli tank get into Nablus city and destroyed all of the streets. That's why always her mother asked her to have boot, not nice shoes. And she had this very, very simple dream, and she couldn't do that because of the Israeli soldiers and because of the Israeli tanks. We have many stories here in Palestine. Every day we have stories. Just yesterday, just today, we had stories. You can find all the stories around the world, and we haven't enough artists or comics artists here in Palestine to convey all of these stories. And that's why I've decided to choose this kind of art to convey all of these stories. And you don't have to create story. You can find it in the street. You can find it while you are talking with your friends, looking to the television, just walking the street. You can find all of these very hard stories without just investing a lot of efforts to find all of these ideas.
You know, that's the point that you make about using this medium to convey these grand points, but also these little intimate details of daily life. I wonder if that's why it's so powerful for the kind of audience that you were talking about at the outset. You know, you're talking about conveying the Palestinian experience of these conditions to people in other places who don't necessarily have the imagery of what life is like in the West Bank. And you can show that at the grand level, but also at these there are such intimate details in Powerborne of Dreams. You know, some of the imagery is so small scale and so precise and very very moving in that way, because we can all sort of immediately connect to those little things.
Maybe because all of these stories, they are real story. I haven't invented any story from all of this book. I've tried to just to depict the real life. I didn't create anything, actually. I've just, even my story inside the prison, it was real story. The stories from outside the prison, it's real story. And maybe the research that I have done about the comics, that all of these details, when you put anything in your story, it has meaning. It has a message from you. That's why you are adding all of these details for your scene or for your panels. And that's why I'm trying nowadays just to create this new story. I'm investing a lot of time just looking for images, try to live with all of stories, to feel that I'm in all of these stories. I'm not just reader. I'm not just someone who is looking for what's going on here in Palestine. I'm part from all of these stories. I'm the main character in my story, and one of these characters inside Palestine. Actually, at the same time, you can see that I've created this bird to be the main hero in my story, because I didn't need to glorify myself as a hero in my story. You can find that I was weak. I was someone who's living a very hard time. Actually, I didn't need to have this choice. If you ask me if I need to be inside the prison or outside the prison, no one choose to be inside the prison. Even all of these Palestinians, they didn't choose to be inside this life. They didn't choose to be part of this life. That's why I've used my Sarabarud bird, because this great artist, who he was my friend, he was my colleague in Al-Najah University. Then he get married to a lady from West Bank and take her to Gaza. And now both of them inside this big prison called Gaza. Even I'm Palestinian, but I cannot imagine the Palestinian life in Gaza or in Jerusalem, because I have never been in Gaza because I need permission from the Israeli. I have never been in Hebron, for example. It's far away from here, just 2 hours from Ramallah. I had this kind of restriction if I want to go to get, for example, visa to United States of America. You can imagine that the American embassy just recently they have rejected my visa to visit United States because I've been in the Israeli prison. This is strange, because I've been in the Israeli prison as a Palestinian who is resisting by his art against this occupation, and this states which call itself United States of America and take the status of liberty in New York as a symbol for freedom, they are preventing me to visit United States of America because just I'm criticizing Israel, and this is strange. And with all of this condition, with all of this strange thing that's surrounding a Palestinian cartoonist or Palestinian artist or even Palestinian citizen, we should convey our issues. They can prevent me to go outside Palestine. They can prevent me to visit United States of America, but they cannot prevent me to convey my ideas and to convey my messages and to convey my stories for all of the people around the world. With this technology that they have invented, I have all of these tools. I have my style. I have my real story and real narrative and real narration that I will convey for all the people around the world. And that's why I have decided I will start with a new comics because of this rejection. I will do the third book. I will do my second comics, and I will include this story inside my second comics.
You've said a couple of things about the connection between the medium that you're using and the message, and how the medium helps to produce the message and it arises out of these conditions. You talked about why you chose linotype for the current book. One of the one of the people in the audience had a question. Are there some other materials used in art making in conjunction with carving? And in some of the images, there appear to be interesting textures from fabric or netting. Do these materials have intrinsic meaning and their own story?
Yeah, actually, I have mixed some another techniques like monoprint. I've learned this kind of techniques in the UK and tried to use this technique also to use another messages, like when I use the image about the poster, the textile, it's look like the prison's wall or the prison's chains around the Palestinian prisoners, and that's why I've used some texture, some textile, some another things to convey my my narrative. And actually, I've done, or I've decided to use this technique while I was in the UK, because I thought that I can get into the facility, the workshops, that I can print all of these images easily. But because of Corona, I have printed all of these pages in my small room in the UK, and but without any facilities, without any machines. And that's why I had a very hard journey with this book. And also, I've decided also with my second comics or my third book, I use the same technique, because I feel that we should carve our stories outside the prison. And another thing, it's very important idea for me. It's very old technique. It's the age of this technique was born 4,000 years ago, and I wanted to use this kind of technique to convey our old narrative, our old because it's very old. It's older than all of this technology. And there is another ideas, because during my visit to the United States, unfortunately now I cannot visit the United States, but I have a lot of friends from around the United States, like Cal Kegel, Analtness, the animator for the Washington Post, Cal Kegel, the cartoonist for The Economist, Matt Walker, the cartoonist for the Politico, and all of these cartoonists, they use the watercolor, the old techniques to draw their daily cartoon. Unfortunately, here in the Arab world, most of the cartoonists and artists, they use the digital artwork to convey or to depict their daily cartoon. And I felt that why we are not using all of these traditional technique, because it's something very authentic. It's not like the digital artwork. I use the digital artwork for my daily cartoon, but nowadays for these projects, even for my first book, I used very old techniques like etching, watercolor, inks, and all these techniques, because I do believe that we are, as a Palestinian also, we should create our own style, our own methods to create our art, not just rely on all of this technology. And we should show that the people around the world, as a Palestinian artist, we have this kind of skills. We have this kind of art. We can use all of these mediums, not just using the digital art, because most of the Palestinian cartoonists and artists, they want to talk their narrative, they want to convey their ideas as cartoonists. At the same time, why I did my first book, because I thought that during all of my career, I wanted just to talk about ideas, topics, narrative, but I didn't care about my artworks. And that's why I evaluate all of my career. I haven't done any good art. I wanted to create a new kind of style, new kind of art. And that's why I've done my first book. And that's why also I was very happy with all of the reviews from the artists from around the world, especially Joe Sacco, when he said that Mohammad Sabaaneh has created a new kind of cartoon mixed between the art, great art, and the cartoon, and all of these components or the political cartoons. That's why also for my second book, I wanted to use very strange kind of art or medium here in Palestine, and most of the Arab countries, we don't have it. We don't have facility to print this kind of art. That's why also I have used this kind of medium.
That actually leads really nicely into our third question that someone wanted to ask you. Thank you for your presentation and for sharing these wonderful images. He says, I have two questions. What is the lasting legacy of Naji Al-Ali on Palestinian cartoonists such as yourself? And how has your work evolved in relation to the events in Syria and the wider Arab world?
Actually, not just his legacy, it's affected the Palestinian cartoonist. I think even when I visited United States of America or School of Visual Art, my friend Seth Tobukman, he's teaching his student about Najil Ali. And actually, there is no relation between what I will see and what the question is. I've tried to create archive for Najil Ali here in Palestine, but unfortunately, no one cared about the Najil Ali archive here in Palestine because he used to criticize PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization. And that's why we are under, as a Palestinians, in our small prisons, we are under the Palestinian Authority control, which has no control at the same time. They have control on us as a Palestinian people, but they don't have any control. For me, my mother used to use Najil Ali cartoon during my life in Kuwait because I was born in Kuwait. And Najil Ali used to work in Kuwait. And my mother used to use his art to tell us about Palestine, what's going on in Palestine, and what's happened in Palestine. And that's why he affected my career badly, actually, to be honest with you, because in my when I have started drawing cartoon, the only cartoonist that I can see Najil Ali. Here in Palestine, in my university in 1997, 1998, in 2000, we had just one book for Najil Ali in Al-Najah University. At that time, we don't have internet. We didn't have internet. We didn't have access to another cartoonist from around the world. We don't have books. We don't have library. The only one that I can see Najil Ali. That's why I thought that I was copying his style, his ideas, and his career. After the year of 2000, when we get access to the internet, and I've tried to find another style, another cartoonist from around the world, that gave me a great opportunity to improve my art and my style and my way. That's mean I cannot deny that for Najil Ali, big role. Because he introduced, or his art introduced this kind of art for me. And my mother, because she used his art, she created another cartoonist.
That's lovely to think of that as his legacy, leading to not just to more cartooning, but to new developments in art. You're really conscious of developing a particular style for conveying the commentary that you want to convey, and it's really striking, particularly in the latest book, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
And that's why exactly, I will tell you something. That's why exactly I try to travel to the UK and to get master degree. I've tried also to get PhD. I'm trying now to get PhD also, if I can, to get also degree in comics or illustration, because now I can teach art. Now I'm teaching.
Oh no, Mohammed, I think we have another glitch.
Art in the Arab American cartoonist. Yeah. You can hear me?
Yeah, we're back.
Yeah, and I have done a lot of workshop for some kids here in Palestine, and I think I've created some cartoonist project for political cartoonists here in Palestine, and I'm very happy because of that. They are actually my colleague now, not my students, and I think I can create another generation. I can provoke them to think critically about what's going on here in Palestine around them, and this is a great tool to convey our life for the people around the world. We don't have freedom because of the Israeli, because of the Palestinian Authority, because of all of it, because of the United States of America, because of European country also. It is just propaganda that all of these countries, they respect freedom of speech. I don't think anyone respect freedom of speech when you criticize Israel, even in European country, even in the UK. And I have a lot of colleagues from around the world. They faced accusation of anti-Semitism because just they criticized Israel. And you can find a lot of stories if you search in the internet about Antonio Antenas, the Vasco from Portuguese. You can see what's happened in New York Times 2 years ago when Antonio Antenas criticized Netanyahu and Trump. He lost his job in New York Times because he criticized Israel. Vasco the same. Steve Bell in the UK the same. In the Guardian, Martin Rosen the same. You can find a lot of stories from around the world in all of these countries who they claim that they have freedom of speech, that they don't have any kind of freedom of speech when the subject of that Israel or criticizing Israel, you will not have this kind of freedom of speech.
I wonder if you think that artists have a little bit more leeway for offering this kind of commentary. Does it seem to people less political, or is it more powerful because it's so visually striking?
I think it's important to talk about all of these political issues. It's hard for us as a Palestinian. You know, I have a lot of colleagues here in Palestine. Some of these colleagues, they prefer to talk about some which we call it social engineering, or some social issues, some another issues, not just political issues. But I think it's the main problem for us as a Palestinian. It is the political issues. You can compare about what's happening now in Ukraine. In Ukraine and in Palestine. You can compare between what's going on there and what's going on here. Even in mainstream media, how they deal with all of these issues, like CNN, BBC, all of these newspapers. They consider what's going on in Ukraine as resistance. At the same time, they consider what's going on here in Palestine as terrorism. They consider what's going on in the Ukraine as refugees in Ukraine. They are talking about the refugees in Ukraine as a human issue, while we have more than 4 million Palestinian refugees around the world. They don't have any access to their own land, and that's why I think the political issue it's very important. Just today, one of the professor, and he's American citizen, he asked me to do something comparing between Gaza and Ukraine. He told me, I've been seeing the CNN for a while, for more than 20 years, because he used to live in New York, and he used to live in the United States of America, and now he's teaching in my university. And he was shocked by how CNN and all of this mainstream media talking about Ukraine while they denied any right of Palestinians to resist against the occupation.
I wonder if the audience that you have, because your work is so good at conveying this sort of human connection, I wonder, as your audience grows, if people are more able to make these connections, because as you say, the sort of human appeal, the humanitarian problems in Ukraine have really struck people, and they've been so visible in the media, and we don't see nearly as much of that. But what you've presented here in your work does make that connection really clear. So as your audience, as you create the next generation of cartoonists, and as your audience for your own work grows, I hope that will become more visible to people in the way that you're laying it out here.
I think that's why I lost my visa to the United States. That's why I've been in the Israeli prison. That's why I'm facing all of this restriction. That's why my artwork was stolen from inside the International Criminal Court. That's why my work was confiscated by the Israeli government. And not just me. That's why, because I'm the representative of the CRNI, Cartoonist International Right Network in the Middle East, and I was monitoring what's going on around the world for the cartoonists, not just me. This is my work, and this is my role as a cartoonist and as a representative for this network. I think the Israeli understand exactly the role of the cartoons more than the Palestinians, unfortunately. I have done research about that, and I found that why the Israeli consider this kind of art is very sensitive, because this kind of art was used during the Second World War to dehumanize the Jews in European country by the Nazis. And they consider any cartoon against the Israeli is anti-Semitic, and that's why we are facing all of this kind of restriction and obstacles during our journey as a cartoonist or as a comics artist. And I have chosen this kind of medium, and I will keep drawing what I do. I think what I face is not harder than what the people in Gaza or in Jerusalem or in West Bank they are facing. We have more than 5,000 Palestinian prisoners inside the Israeli prison. More than 1 million Palestinian person visited the Israeli prison, the real Israeli prison, because all the Palestinians, they are inside the Israeli prison, I think. But yeah, this is my role, and I will keep doing that because this is my role.
I think you were right to call your book Powerborne of Dreams, because a lot of what you're doing here is really about power, the power of how these images communicate your message. And so I'm delighted to see how well received this book is, and really pleased that we were able to host you for a talk. Thank you so much for your time and for your expertise. I think you've made some really well illuminated for us. And I really cannot wait to see your next work.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me. Thank you for spending this time with me, and thank you for helping me convey my messages.
Thank you. It has been our honor to host you here at the Center for Arab and Islamic Studies at Villanova, and I hope that we can host you again in future.